Hello, everyone. This is Deborah Richardson, and today I am putting the AP in Happy, where accounts payable teams are empowered to protect the vendor master file from fraud. This podcast will give a voice to accounts payable team members by talking about the growing reality of cyber attacks in their world and which vendor setup and vendor management techniques they can apply to protect the vendor master file from fraud. So stay tuned. On today's podcast, I have a guest joining me, Josh Kunkel. He is the founder and director of architecture at Method Architecture here in Tulsa. And today we are talking about Employee Appreciation Day 2019. So welcome to episode 20, a conversation with Josh Kunkel about Employee Appreciation Day. On last week's podcast and blog, I talked about the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace by Gary Chapman and Paul White. Now, you may be familiar with the 5 love languages by Gary Chapman, but this book talked about the importance of recognizing each employee and how they can have one of these 5 ways that make them feel appreciated. I listed each of the 5 ways: words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, physical gifts, and physical touch. And then I gave some examples of each. I ended that by talking about what method I used to determine which way my employees prefer to feel appreciated. And I'll link to that blog post and podcast in the podcast show notes. So on today's podcast, since it's being recorded on Employee Appreciation Day, Friday, March 1st, 2019, I thought it would be fun to bring on a guest and find out what they are doing for their employees today and even throughout the year to make them feel appreciated. So I have with me today Josh Kunkel, and Josh is the founder and director of architecture at Method Architecture here in Tulsa. So welcome, Josh. Can you give us some background on your company, number of employees, that type of thing?
Sure. Thanks, Deborah. I really appreciate being on the podcast. So Method Architecture is an architecture, interiors, planning, and preservation firm in the Kendall Whittier neighborhood of Tulsa. We actually just hired our 7th employee. So we are a remote company, meaning we do have a physical, we're actually kind of a hybrid, meaning that we do have a physical office, which is in a commercial storefront on a Main Street community, which we're very proud of because we do a lot of preservation work. It's good to be a part that we know all of our neighbors in our little downtown area. But we have 4 people that are in the office, and then we have 3 that are outside of the office. And the new one, she lives in Austin, Texas. So we are multi-state too. We are currently licensed in Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Texas, and have projects in all 3 states. So we as a firm are very technologically forward, and because everything that we do is cloud-based, which is unusual for an architecture firm. Everyone has laptops, iPad Pros, and we can work from anywhere, which is kind of nice in some ways, although with the possible impending snow this weekend, we don't get any snow days, unfortunately.
But that's really good. And you know what? I'm excited to talk to you about employee appreciation, especially with a company that has remote employees, which I think can be a challenge for companies. So today is Employee Appreciation Day 2019. So what did you do for your employees?
So we actually, I had the opportunity, I guess, to be in the office really late last night. I wrote out individual thank you notes to everybody. that highlighted the qualities that I appreciated of them and the great things that they were doing to support method architecture. And then today we have a Mexican bakery across the street, and so we went for churros and sweet treats.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah, I've been there. That is a nice bakery.
Yeah, it's and they had the cream-filled churros today, so it was great.
So what did you do for that, for your remote employees?
So I mailed each of them yesterday, so they should be getting it today or tomorrow in the case of Sarah in Texas, that same card. Even though Sarah started on Monday this week, I still sent her something to thank her for her commitment and the skills and talents that she's bringing to our office.
Wow, you know what? That's going to go a long way to let her know that she joined the right company.
Yes, yeah, we're very excited to have her.
Okay, so do you recognize your employees throughout the year, say with birthdays or any other type of celebrations?
Yes, or if they want to have their birthday celebrated. So we have one of our team members that she doesn't want anybody to know it's her birthday. But what she likes to do is she likes to take that day and she likes to sleep in. It's her one day of the year to be able to sleep in. It's by choice. She could do it over the weekends if she wanted, but that's her day. But yes, we'll celebrate birthdays. We'll go out to lunch, or we have a full kitchen in our office, and so we'll make lunch. So that we also a lot of for recognition, it's really best to recognize those good behaviors and good things as soon as they happen.
Right.
If you wait through a more formal review process, especially if it's once a year, that's way too long, and you don't mentally associate the good behavior with the reward and the positive talk.
Right.
So they're very disconnected. And so the closer that you can put those two things together, the better and the more effective that it's going to be. It's a good habit of highly engaged teams and highly effective teams.
Okay.
As such, we don't do yearly reviews. So we do reviews kind of continuously. We are doing every 3 months, we're meeting and we're evaluating our company and everything that we're doing using a system called Traction, which I know you're familiar with.
Right.
So since we're a small team, we're evaluating everybody within that every 3 months, which is a good time frame.
Yeah, and that for the listeners out there, that Traction is a book. And who's the author of that again, Josh?
Gino Wickman.
And we'll put a link to that in the podcast notes, but that is a very popular management style model to use. And so again, I'll put that in the podcast notes in case anyone wants to look that up. And I know Josh and I have talked about that in the past, but I've read the book and I've used the suggestions and the recommendations for the model. And I brought it forward to my last company as well, and use that in meetings where you ask, at the beginning of every employee meeting, you ask for good news personal and good news professional. And it's just something that's really nice. It gets the employees engaged and it also builds trust. So again, I'll put that link to that book in the show notes.
Yeah, one of those things about, having a highly engaged and high performing team is that kind of constant open and honest discussion. And so it's amazing, fixing because people don't feel, oftentimes people don't feel appreciated because they're not being listened to.
Right.
So if they make a suggestion and that suggestion does nothing, then, they're less likely to make that same suggestion, even though it's going to help the team, or help them out and, become better organization. So it's important, as the boss, I guess, to listen to those things. And as, with the fellow team members, it's important to be able to stop and listen to those things, because they will tell you. You just have to recognize that you need to be listening and then do something with it.
And I think circling back to your original point that you recognize positive behavior, good performance at the time that it's done versus, just during the annual, semi-annual reviews is something that's very valuable. And again, makes the employee feel appreciated because it's in the moment.
Mm-hmm. And then you can start to set up, although we're not doing bonus structures right now because we're 8 months old as a company. We're not quite there yet, but that's where I've seen other companies where they will bonus, their, either every quarter or even in every project too. And again, it ties it to that good behavior, that successful project or successful team, and pair it immediately with something that kind of stimulates the brain positively. Right.
So you talked about you have the one employee who on her birthday she doesn't necessarily want to be recognized, but she does like to sleep in. So you have gotten to know, at least how that employee likes to feel appreciated. So do you know how each of your employees would like to feel appreciated?
So this is kind of an interesting thing because I've learned something. So I've heard of the 5 love languages, and actually a friend, Corey Miller, he and I have a similar interest in these kinds of discussions. And he had mentioned that he had done the 5 love languages with his team. And so I just talked with him a couple of weeks ago, so I haven't been able to do it yet. But we have had those kind of open conversations because I know that my team is not motivated by money. Right. As a team, that we have one where she's going after getting her license, and I told her that I would give her a pretty sizable raise if she got licensed and actually did it. And she's like, that's nice, but that's not a motivation for me. So I will still give her the significant raise because you also deserve to be paid too. But it's writing those cards. That was a direct thing. That makes a big impact for them. Or it's again, it's not just celebrating on today, it's doing things throughout the year. So we do a monthly lunch just together as a team, and just, kind of unplug from projects and just talk. We also do things that, like at the beginning of our meeting, we talk about how our weekends were. And so it helps everybody get to know each other, and because there's getting to know somebody, and then there's really getting to know somebody, and those kinds of things really help, and everybody to be appreciated. So we also have one where he's kind of in that advocacy. So his personality type is the advocate. And so knowing the fact that we're after a social cause, or out volunteering in the community, that, whether it's, since we're in the Main Street, we talked about earlier that, we haven't done anything lately. So we need to do something that's out in our community. So one of the things that we came up with is, it would be really easy for us to just go get some trash bags and just go pick up trash on our couple of blocks. And just do that. And so it's doing things like that really help them to be fulfilled, that when we do it as a team, then everybody's happy. Um,
Yeah, and that can still work for remote workers as well, because I know there, like your company, there are other companies that will allow anywhere from 4 hours to a full day as a community day that an employee can take, and they can decide, what organization they're going to volunteer their time for those 4 hours or for that day. And then even for, the meetings or monthly luncheons, you can, Zoom that person in, for lack of a better word. I really mean WebEx that person in, but Zoom has that WebEx capability. But they can come in and feel like part of the team. So there's still, those opportunities to recognize those remote workers as well, the same as you do your on-site workers.
that's a really good point. We actually did that. So we just we're learning a new project management and CRM software.
Mm-hmm.
And for the training, we ordered Jimmy John's, but we also did it for our remote people too.
Yes.
So we were all eating Jimmy John's together, learning about the new software. So again, it's about that kind of shared experience.
Right. Perfect.
So it's very easy to do.
Okay, so this is March 1st, still in the first quarter of the year, so it's still early in the year. Do you have any upcoming employee events?
So I think, let's see, we do what we call recess. And so that's where we now have, there's actually a neighborhood bar that just opened up from our office 4 doors down. And so we'll go, we'll quit at like 3 or 3:30 and just walk down to the bar, go have a couple of drinks. And
you're going to get some applications in or some resumes. I can see that now.
And then we have, so with the traction system, actually next Friday, and we're doing a recess after this because you really need drinks after a strategic planning session. So we have our Vision Day 1 on next Friday. So we're going to go do strategic planning all day, and then we will have our recess and have fun afterwards. So that's kind of our employee activity that's coming up. Yeah, that's the one that we got on the calendar right now. So, yep, it should be good.
Well, I tell you again, I think you're going to get some resumes out of this one. What is it? Recess at the bar, 4 doors down after work. But, method architecture sounds like a great place to work for employees. And we know that happy employees take very good care of our clients. So where can potential employees or potential clients go for more information on method architecture?
So we have our website, method.group, which we have recently revamped. So it looks pretty slick right now. There is a careers page to where you can go submit your resume. There is also a fillable contact form under contact to where you can send us information about your project. There is also, we use Acuity for scheduling. So you can go set an appointment and it connects with our calendar directly from the website. Then we are on Facebook and Instagram, very active there on both platforms. And I'm also on LinkedIn, and our business page isn't as active as we would like, but that's the next thing that we're going to be paying attention to.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much, Josh, for being a guest on the Putting the AP in Happy podcast.
Awesome. Thank you. This was fun.
Thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the 20th episode of the Putting the AP in Happy podcast, where accounts payable teams are empowered to protect the vendor master file from fraud. Don't forget to check the show notes for the links to last week's blog post and podcasts where I detailed the 5 languages of appreciation just in time for Employee Appreciation Day today. But don't worry, you can use it throughout the year to recognize your employees and make them feel appreciated. Also, in the show notes, I will have a link to the book Traction that we talked about, and I will also have a link to Josh's company, Method Architecture. If you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing and writing a review of my podcast on the platform that you use to listen. Stay happy.